Hello, everyone. This is Ana Pacheco with Santa Fe 101.com. My guest today is John Congdon, and he is a specialist. He's with Santa Fe Properties, and he specializes in real estate in both Santa Fe and San Miguel County. John, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, please.
Excellent. Well, good. So tell us a little bit. I know, I know that you're kind of your father's been a huge mentor to you in terms of real estate.
Absolutely.
Tell me about your experience in selling real estate, and I understand you grew up in San Miguel County. So
Yeah,
educate us about these two
yeah,
different countries.
absolutely. Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Santa Fe, San Miguel County native, I guess you could say. I grew up in La Cueva, kind of in between Glorieta and Pecos. My dad worked at Brush Ranch, school for kids with learning disabilities, up the Pecos Canyon, 12 miles right before Torero for 35 years. So I've spent a lot of time growing up in the area and, really love it. I did move to Denver for 5 years, 4 years, and taught English in Spain for a year, and just moved back to Santa Fe a little over 2 years ago, and jumped right into the real estate world, working alongside with my father. He's been an excellent mentor and has really taught me a lot, and it's really great to be home. I forgot how beautiful northern New Mexico is, and especially the Pecos Canyon and just all of the wilderness surrounding the Santa Fe area. It's really feel really blessed to be able to access that on a daily basis and live around here. So yeah, it's been
Well,
great.
I think it's important that you went away. Santa Fe is my hometown, and I actually went away for 16 years. I
Oh
lived
wow.
in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. So I think it's my two children. They don't live in Santa Fe right now. I think it's so important that we all get away from New Mexico because number one, we'll really appreciate it when we get back, and we're also bringing life experience back. It's going to help us
Totally.
here when we get
Yeah.
back. So I mean, it sounds like you had you had a great time in Spain and Denver. I mean, you
Oh
picked up
yeah.
a lot of skills that are going to be helpful. So,
Right.
you were mentioning before we got online here that you have also sold some real estate in Espanola. So tell us a little bit what it's like selling real estate. Espanola, Santa Fe, Pecos area. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it's northern New Mexico is a really, really great area, and what's really amazing is that when they're all probably, I drove from Espanola to Pecos last night, and it took me about an hour, but you really get some unique, different terrains and topographies amongst that little corridor. When you're up north in Espanola, you get a really amazing view of the San de Cristo Mountains, as well as Santa Fe Baldy, Pecos Baldy, and the Truchas Peaks. And so, it's kind of interesting the way the mountain range comes down. Can have Espanola and Santa Fe, and then Pecos is kind of located on the other side of it. So, selling real estate's been really interesting. All of them offer kind of a variety of different options. Up north in Espanola, I've sold a kind of traditional northern New Mexico style home. It was actually in Alcalde, a little bit north of there, but double thick adobe walls. The house I think was like originally built over 100 years ago, so it had short little 5 foot high doorways. I bumped my head on a couple times, but it was a really, really interesting and unique property. In Santa Fe, I've sold everything from traditional adobes to new builds that are coming up in town. Santa Fe is great because you can get a really wide variety of different styles, and there's something for everybody. And in the Pecos, I've kind of predominantly focused with stuff up the canyon, kind of like summertime cabins, which are really great. It can be a little unique buying in that area, as a lot of stuff is, you would lease the land from the Forest Service, you purchase the cabin, but then you would have a yearly lease to the Forest Service. But I am quite familiar with that, and so there is many different ways to purchase land in New Mexico, and something for everybody. So
Well,
so
tell
it's
me
been a
about
lot.
the leasing. That's interesting. So
Yeah,
you actually lease the land. You own the cabin, but you lease the land. You don't actually ever own the land.
that is correct. So it can be a little tricky, and that is not on every portion of the canyon, but just the ones, but specifically kind of outside of Iron Gate and Holy Ghost are the predominant areas where the leaseholds are located. It's nice because the cabins are usually pretty affordable. We sold one over the summer that was, I think, or last summer that went for 47. one this most recent summer, which was in the mid 30s. So
So
they
you're
are,
talking about 30,000,
yeah,
47,000.
pardon me,
And
pardon me.
so what is a lease like? Is that, does it sit on an acre of land or a lot, or what would that
Good
be?
question. Very good question. So, like I said, it is kind of priced appropriately. So you would basically be buying the cabin. The Forest Service would own the land at all times. You have kind of a designated little area, which would be technically like your land that you could access. But if you want to do any sort of adjustments, you are going to need to get in touch with the Forest Service, and you need to get the plans approved by the Forest Service. And sometimes you will have to do an archaeological excavation to make sure that you're not going to be removing any sort of ruins or remains from something from back there. So it can be a little bit trickier, but it does have it is a really amazing area, and you can have access to all the wilderness throughout the summer.
And
Which
again,
people
what is the size? What would be the typical size of one of these leased lots?
So the lot themselves are generally about a quarter acre or so, but it's, you kind of think of it as you're purchasing the house and you are in the national forest. So you do have a lot close access to a lot of hiking trails, rivers, ponds, things like that. They generally, it would be about depending if you're in Iron Gate or in Holy Ghost, there is a transfer fee involved as well. In Holy Ghost, that transfer fee I think is around 1,200, and the lease is around 1,800. And that's basically
$1,800 a year, a month? What is it?
a year.
Oh,
So
okay,
you would do a
that's reasonable.
one-time transfer fee, and then you would pay I think it's about $1,800 a year. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, so let me check on that.
And how long would that lease be for?
So generally, it's a 20-year lease, and so you would sign on with them, and you would pay that yearly increment. You'd be locked in for 20 years. I think the most recent one is coming up in 2028 is when the 20-year period ends, and then you would negotiate with them to renew another 20-year leasehold. There are kind of three different ways you can own land up in the canyon. There is still fee simple land available, where you would own the land and you'd be able to do whatever you want with it. Those parcels are somewhat limited, and obviously the price point reflects that. The second manner is what I just discussed, these 20-year leaseholds, where you can get into a lease with the Forest Service. It's our understanding they are going to be renewing them continually, as Holy Ghost has become a really popular area. And then the third manner, which is a 100-year leasehold. These are really kind of as popular. There aren't very many of them left, but this was an interesting situation as it's kind of created, I think, in the mid 50s, and the leasehold is coming up, going to expire in 2052. But this is an area kind of specifically above, kind of in between Jacks Creek and Ponchuela, up in the Pecos Canyon. And these leaseholds will expire in 2052, and you will need to remove your cabin or your structure from there by 2052, or the Forest Service will retake it. And my understanding is they would tear down the cabin, as it is planned for a very large national or nature preserve that they're putting in there.
So it's kind of what you're describing is kind of similar. I've heard that at Cochiti Lake, which is south of Santa Fe, that people have through the Cochiti Pueblo, they have 99-year leases
Right.
with the Pueblo.
Yeah.
So they actually own the house, but they don't own the land.
Right.
So is it hard for somebody to get a mortgage then? Because I always wonder, well, who would
Yeah.
lend you money if you don't really own it?
Very good question. And so for the majority of these, a lot of them need to be cash deals. Unfortunately, because of what you just mentioned, a lender is going to be reluctant to lend on something where you don't own the land. That's kind of, I guess, makes sense. But so a lot of them do need to be cash deals. The other option is that if you can refinance something to kind of pull cash out. I've seen people do that as well. But the nice thing is that they don't get into these really super high price points because of the Forest Service lease. So it does make it a little bit more doable for someone to get cash and have an option on that as well.
And then what about so if it's just a piece of, do all of these leased lots, do they have a cabin already on them, or do you build the cabin as well? Do you have that
I believe
cost?
they all have cabins on them at this point in time, is my understanding. There is still vacant lots of land available in the area, but they are fee simple, whereas you would purchase the vacant land and then you could build something. I think that when my father really knows a whole lot about this. It's got a really unique history to it. But my understanding is it came around with Teddy Roosevelt, and he's really into national parks and trying to get people into the wilderness. And so they created these kind of leaseholds as a way for people to have escapes to get out into to the wilderness. Um, and then the other interesting thing is that the canyon was really popular in the 30s, and even kind of before then, there was 5 dude ranches up in the canyon, and this was kind of before the time of air conditioning, as I've been told. And so a lot of people, in really hot areas, would come to the canyon for the summer and enjoy the outdoors and cool off, as it's 120 degrees in some parts of the country, and then you go up there and it's a nice 75 or so. So there used to be 5 dude ranches kind of going up and down. There's only one. The Tres Lagunas was a former dude ranch, Brush Ranch was a former dude ranch, and the Monastery was a former dude ranch. They've all kind of been converted, but there's kind of an interesting history up there as well. Also, in the 1930s, there was the mine, and there was I think close to 15,000 people living up there. So that's when it was the busiest it ever was. And apparently they had a really long cable car connecting everything to Pecos. And so it's kind of got a rich history. And I've been fortunate enough to meet, through my father, some people who have lived up there for, 50 years. And some of their stories are pretty incredible. So yeah.
And what is the size of these cabins in terms of square feet?
They vary in size, but some of them in Holy Ghost can be even 1,800, 2,000 square feet. Then those hold a little bit higher of a price point, and then smaller, it could be even a few hundred square feet. I think the cabin that we sold last summer in the lower price point, I think, was around 475 square feet, so it's pretty small. But it was right at the base of Iron Gate, so it had a great view, kind of overlooking the backside of the ski basin, and then just quick access for hiking and fishing and such like that.
And you're saying so you say the backside of the ski basin, you're referring to the Santa Fe ski basin, right?
Pardon me, yeah.
Yes, and so then I wanted to ask you, so do these cabins have like modern plumbing, electricity, Wi-Fi?
Good question as well. So most of them are going to be. It depends, and honestly, the price point will kind of reflect that as well. Some of the less expensive ones do not have plumbing or running water. Some of them have an outhouse. The one that we sold had a spring nearby, and so that was where they would bring out 2 5-gallon jugs, and they would fill up from the spring, and then kind of use that for bring their drinking water, stuff like that. But then if you get into a higher price point, we do have a listing up in Holy Ghost that does have a septic tank. It's a fully plumbed, full electricity, and it's a really nice cabin. So it really kind of varies depending on.
Again, what about internet? Because if somebody's watching this and they want to work remotely, maybe they even just part-time be out in New Mexico, they need access to the internet.
Good question. So it is available in the area. There is a couple different options. I had one client, telephone lines are available up there as well. So one option would be that you do, a DSL off of your land line. I have heard of that working rather effectively. The other thing that they do out there is, I think it's, and I might be mistaken, so don't quote me directly, but I think he used a HughesNet, where it was basically a satellite that bounced a signal off of one another. And this was a cabin way up on Elk Mountain, 5 miles up a dirt road, but it had wonderful internet, and I was able actually to communicate with the clients, in Santa Fe when they were up there using the internet up there. So I know it is possible to get it. In that case, it actually was pretty strong as well.
Excellent. And then what about, of course, I'm such a princess here. What about amenities? How far is the closest Starbucks? Where do you do grocery shopping? What do you do?
Good question. So Pecos, the village, will be your closest for your immediate amenities. There is a Dollar General and a Family Dollar there. So it won't be a full-blown grocery store, but a lot of people do their primary grocery shopping through those couple stores. In terms of a Starbucks, you're probably going to be in Santa Fe.
Well,
But
I'm
if,
just joking about the Starbucks, so that was just a joke. But
yeah,
but basically though, so you
but
still have to either go, would it be a better option for people to drive to Santa Fe to do their shopping, or
well,
would
so
they go to Las Vegas? Or here's another option. They could also just go to the community of El Dorado. They have a grocery
that's
store.
what I was going to say. Yeah. So I think what a lot of people do is kind of depends on the type of shopping you're going to do. If you're up at the cabin and you're, it's probably about 20, depending where you are up the canyon, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to get from where you are to the village of Pecos. So if you need something like milk and eggs, a lot of people will just go to, Dollar General and pick up their kind of necessities there. And then depending, like I said, if the El Dorado would be probably about 15 minutes from there. So you could do more extensive shopping there. When a lot, when I had friends that lived up there, what they would also do is they'd go to Santa Fe to go to a place like, to do bulk item shopping. So you get like, large things from Sam's Club or something like that. So you can sustain yourself for, extended periods of time. And then you just do kind of quick runs into Pecos when you need them.
And then what if do people, I mean, I know the winters, I mean, Pecos gets a lot more snow
Right.
than Santa Fe ever does. What
Very true.
about, do people live there year round, where, because it could be kind of rough?
Excellent question as well. So on these Forest Service leases, any of those cabins are typically going to be intended for a summer home only. In fact, up Holy Ghost, and I'm not sure about Iron Gate, but definitely Holy Ghost, they do have a gate where they do close it on January 1st. And if you were an owner, you could still access the cabin, but the intent is to only utilize it during the summertime. So.
And is that because it would be, in terms of emergency services, it would be hard to get to people because the
It'd be
roads are going to be
a lot
snow packed or that
well,
type of thing?
exactly. So like I said, they would give you probably. My understanding is they'll give you the gate code and you could access it in terms of an emergency, but they do not plow any of the roads. So I've been up there in March, and it's kind of funny. In the late March, you'll see in the sunshine, flowers blossoming, and in the shade, you'll see 2 feet of snow. So the road they do block that gate, and the road will accumulate a large amount of snow. So it will almost make driving up there would be nearly impossible. But they do provide access in cases of emergency that you would need to get to the cabin during the winter. But in that area, they are really intended only as summertime cabins. However, in the fee simple areas where you do own the land, we have had several friends growing up that do live in the canyon year round, and they really enjoy it. But it's not for everybody, as you just hit on. Those winters can be pretty, receive a large amount of snowfall, and you're in the mountains, so
And
you're
from
not accustomed to it.
from what you're saying too, I'm thinking that this would be, this type of a living, kind of at least part-time living option would be for younger people. I mean, because I'm just thinking, if you're kind of far away from things, I mean, if you're older, you're not going to have access to easy medical care or
Right.
other types of things. So if anybody's
Yeah.
watching this interview, I'm thinking, if you're in your, 20s to maybe early 60s, you probably can still hang
Right.
with something like this, but
Yeah.
it's not really a retirement place for other people.
Not
'Cause it's a
necessarily.
little bit, it's kind of like rough living. It's like the
It is,
West.
well, yeah. And so, like, yeah, exactly. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And so, for people who do want to live there year round, there is options to do it. But you would have to go with that fee simple land, and it, in turn, would have a little bit heftier of a price tag. The nice thing about the suburb cabin areas is it's really a great opportunity to have a place to call your own, that you can get away in the middle of the summer. I have some colleagues actually that own up Dalton Canyon, which is about halfway up the Pecos Canyon, and they absolutely love it. And every Friday, Saturday, they have good internet there, so they go out, they take the kids go ride their bikes all over the place, go fishing, hiking, and then she works from home, and they spend every weekend up there.
So you
They
were saying for the lease land that it basically shuts down like January 1st. So when do they reopen again?
I think it's generally around the first week of April, and so they kind of let that's kind of the close down period. It's really interesting. Almost, you'll go. I've done that drive in the dead of winter, and it's usually they do plow the main road fairly well. As you get up the canyon, it gets a little trickier and trickier, but it's almost like a ghost town. You really don't see any other cars or anybody else. If you go up there during 4th of July weekend, it's like a zoo, so because a lot of people come to escape during the, Memorial Day, 4th of July. So those are kind of the main weekends, and it seems like people like really get out there.
And so
And
roughly you have about 8 months a year of that you
right.
have the option of being up there.
Yeah.
So it's great if anybody's watching this that they want to maybe they still want to live in San Francisco or Chicago or New York, but they want to be able to jump out here, a few
Yeah.
times a year to their summer
And
cabin.
that's
That's
what
really
a lot
cool.
of people do.
We're I told you this was going to go really fast. We are out of time.
No, how-
Is there any type of anything else you want to say? Well, I could get you on again later for another
Yeah.
interview, but is there something else you want to talk about in terms of Pecos or Santa Fe in terms of real estate right now? If people are watching this, what you might be able to help them with at this point in time?
Well, I'm happy to help out and assist in any way possible. Santa Fe has experienced a real surge in the real estate market right now. A lot of people are moving to New Mexico, and it can be tricky to navigate it. I am very familiar with the area, and I'm happy to help in any way that I possibly can. So,
Well, good. Well, I want to thank you so much, and John, and we Santa Fe Properties, John Congdon, and thank you. And I learned a lot. I had no idea that
great.
you could buy lease property up north.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
And if anybody has any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. I'm
I'll
happy
have
to.
all your contact details with this interview. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Thanks.